My name is Renee Westfall, and I'm running for City Director, Seat 6. Thank you to the Alliance for having this. This has been a very informative and what a wonderful attitude just from everybody here. I'm very pleased to be included. I guess I've got to throw out my credentials. I beat you all. I'm a 9th generation descendant in Garland County. Prior to its becoming Garland County, there was a time before then. I think everybody talked about we were born here, our grandparents were here, but let me tell you why that's important. When we drive across the bridges, those were the ones my grandfather built. When we walk and we look at those buildings downtown, that's where my mom took me to shop. It doesn't say enough just to say I was born here or I was raised here. There is a love for this community that has been passed down generation to generation. And that also answers the question about why I want to be a city director. I want to be a part of the progress that's being made. The directors have talked to you about the strides in downtown. And there has been some great strides. There are wonderful shops downtown. There are great things happening. But my perspective also shows that we're lacking in some areas. Some areas that are concerning to me are the public safety aspect. It'll come as no surprise to my opponent that the next words out of my mouth are going to be the police and fire retirement account. It's been a concern of mine for many years. We're dragging an old debt that's stopping our progress. We're going to be facing a police and fire radio dispatch center that the initial draft study is somewhere from $8 million to $14 million, and that's only for the city. That doesn't include whatever's going on in the county. Now, why this is so important is because every penny that is going to pay that outdated retirement debt is coming out of the city budget, the police and fire budget. So we're decreasing our public safety because of debt that we haven't taken care of. I'd love to blame you guys, but you know you didn't do it. That's a 25-year-old debt. You got it handed to you. And one of the, certainly one of the things that as a director, should the voters of District 6 put me in, I'm going to make that a priority. Our priorities have to come from the residents, and the residents have to be included. When I walked the neighborhoods and got my petition signed, and when I talked to people, feeling safe in their homes and feeling safe with their children was their #1 issue. Coming not too far behind was, as I said, 9 generations. I've got my children. My daughter's 22, my son's 19. And I'm faced with what every family in this city is faced with. Will my children have a job? Can they stay here? It's tough. We've got poverty rates in the city of Hot Springs that range from 60% downtown to 29% in District 6. There are some real serious issues that need our attention, and they need to be focused on. The priorities, for me as a mother, as a person who works here, are a little different. Doesn't mean that I think what the board has done is wrong. It just means I think we need to shift our focus a little bit. You also invited me to comment on the LGBT rights. I'm learning a lot from my children. I got a call from the school when my daughter was in her senior year. And they said, ma'am, we need you to come up and talk with us. Your daughter started a gay-straight alliance against bullying. And I said, why do you want to talk to me? I learned early on, don't go to the school unless you really know. But it was in response to bullying and hatred. And while we may all have different views, there has never been an excuse for discrimination or bullying or hatred of any human being. And whatever means or methods we have to do to change that attitude, I'm not sure that a city ordinance is going to do it. Quite frankly, your sign ordinance did not pass the constitutional test. So we're looking at, as far as city ordinances, I think we need to look at federal protections. And certainly protections that involve hate crimes. Is my 3 minutes up yet? Not so. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Renee, how exactly would you address the police and firemen's retirement fund?
The police and fire retirement fund, the goal at this point is to pay down that debt so that we can get their rate of return back up to 8%. There is no hope of paying it off, whether it's 28 million, 15 million, or 20 million. But what we have done is we've let that debt go so far, their rate of return has gone in the last year. Now this was done on this board's watch. The rate of return for their retirement has dropped from 8% to 3%. We've got to find that magic number and get the rate of return back up for them, because that's seriously affecting their retirement. Link Spicer, the Deputy City Manager, has been appointed to the lot fee board. So I am hopeful that we will have a lot more insight in what can and will be done by having him placed there in the future.
It's not your turn, it's her turn.
Anyone else? Just following up on that, where would you make cuts in the city budget to fund that?
Well,
I mean, I'm not saying it's not important, but what would you cut to fund
well,
it?
you know, I don't know that I have enough knowledge. I have stood on my head and looked through the city budget, but I can tell you that the city found $2 million to purchase and clean up the Majestic. I haven't figured out where that came from, what department that was pulled from, but if we can pull $2 million out of that budget to do something on the Majestic, I certainly think we could look at putting $2 million a year into the police and fire. And really, as a director, I wouldn't be responsible for the nuts and bolts of how it is done. There are over 600 city employees that's what they do as their job. As a director, it would be important for me to let them know that that is the priority, and when they do their budget, that needs to be included in it.
So it's not included now? I mean, is that?
No, ma'am. The way that the payoff for the police and fire retirement is now is totally controlled by Lot Fee, the state agency who took over our bad retirement account. Every year, Lot Fee sends a statement saying this is the amount that you will pay because of how many people have retired, how much debt has continued to accrue. So one year, and I saw a 2012 consultant study, that it varies anywhere from 33 cents on the dollar to as high as it could be 75 cents for every dollar paid to a police and fireman will now be paid to Lot Fee to try and overcome the underfunding.
But the board has no control over that, is what you're saying.
The board is required to follow Lot Fee's formula because we are in debt. The board certainly could pay off that debt and not entirely depend on Lot Fee. You have a question?
Yeah, no, I really have a statement. I don't think you're characterizing that correctly. The retirement account for the police and fire for Lot Fee comprised of two elements. One is the old debt for a closed retirement plan from 1984.
It was actually put in 1989.
Which is the debt she's talking about. And the other is the continuing retirement plan. Now, the city pays both of those together.
Yes.
The old debt that she's talking about, it was $41 million back in
2012.
And there was discussion about going out with a bond issue so that we could fund the retirement of that debt. And that comes from people who believe that you can retire a debt, like the jail bonds. You could go in and retire those early because the performance is defined exactly in the front-end legislation. In a retirement plan, you cannot, and the way they pay those kinds of bonds off, they were going to do that, is they raise another bond issue and they set that money aside and they call it defeasing the bonds. So when the bonds come due, they take that money out and it's calculated based on the percentage of interest rate from each one. With this liability, the $41 million liability, you don't have a chance to do that because you have different retirement rates. You have some people who get remarried and therefore you have a new 21-year-old on the retirement plan for life. You don't have the market returns on the investment, so there is no way to predict what the liability is. And I'll give you an example.
Well, however, hold on just a second. We knew when we put that retirement account into Lot Fee, we knew we didn't have enough money.
Oh, we know that. I know that.
We owed that money and we opted not to pay it.
That's correct. Now, that was many years ago, they opted not to pay it, so we're.
Right, but we carried that debt year after year, and we accepted the responsibility for those higher rates because we didn't pay off our debt. It can
That's
get,
correct.
and it can, excuse me?
I said, that's correct.
Yeah, that's
But now-
what I
But
thought.
now you're asking us to address it, and I'm saying, when you cannot just address it by paying off the old debt.
I think the
There's a
goal,
difference between paying off the debt and paying off the liability. The liability is what's not predictable, the debt is.
You're
Well,
right.
if that debt really is, we're going from $41 million one year to $25 million the next.
And what about the 8% return versus the 3%? I think that would be a realistic goal, as I said, to pay down that debt and get the police and fire back getting the 8%.
We've got a 22-year term.
But they took away 5% of their retirement.
We
Yes.
agreed with Lobby to pay off the old debt.
But the rate of return
Over
that the
a-
police and
over a-
fire
over a
are
20
receiving has gone from 8% to 5% to
Well, that's
3%.
because of the market returns. You don't control the market.
No, that was because of the debt.
No.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
I want to thank everyone who came and participated, and everyone who will see this later. I really appreciate the candidates coming, and hopefully this will happen again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.